The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder and managing partner of Financing Solutions. Financing Solutions is the leading provider of lines of credit to nonprofits. On a personal level, I have 25 years of building companies, and I have the privilege to speak with nonprofit executive directors on a daily basis through Financing Solutions, of course. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend. Today, I'm really excited to introduce to you our speaker, who is Pierrette Downer. She's the founder and executive director of BFRIN, that's BFRIN, which stands for Being Fitted Right is Necessary. Pierrette graduated valedictorian from Bartram Academy of Business and Finance in 1994 and has committed herself to the humanities as well as research and implementation initiatives targeting the underserved community for the past 20 plus years throughout the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware as it pertains to counseling, breast cancer support as a certified mastectomy fitter, as well as through the research and statistic projects that she's been involved with. During her tenure as administrator at Temple University Hospital in the Community Development Division for 10 plus years, she was successful in procuring and maintaining the CDC's fiscal sponsored project, serving the redevelopment of the Tioga Nicetown area of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In 2008, Mrs. Downer, along with her family, established BFRIN, a nonprofit organization which continues to educate breast cancer survivors, as well as doctors, therapists, and various hospital personnel in underserved communities to understand how adjuvant therapies procure the survivor's need for cosmesis, which assists survivors along their breast cancer journey. So just so everybody knows, I had to look up two words in this introduction. I didn't know what adjuvant meant, and hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly because I actually have dyslexia. And that is the treatment for cancer, and cosmesis is the preservation and restoration or bestowing of bodily beauty. And I think it was really important that I just kind of wanted to make sure everybody understood those two words because it's very relevant to what Pierrette does. Many of BFRIN's programs rely upon volunteerism, and Mrs. Downer's contribution toward advancing the educational empowerment of breast cancer survivors throughout the community. So I'd like to welcome Pierrette to today's nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen.
I'm excited to really speak to you today. I did a lot of research on your organization and you, and so I know what we're going to get to before after this first question is how do you keep that personal one-to-one relationship with your quote unquote customers that you service as your nonprofit grows. And I know it's an area that you really kind of feel that you guys have done a really good job with. So maybe before we get into that business-related nonprofit, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got involved in BFRIN.
Sure. Well, we found that so many women in underserved communities were not being provided with the opportunity and the necessary education after breast surgery. For instance, to regain symmetry after surgery, some women were being told by their medical team to actually stuff socks into their brasiers. And, this was very alarming. in this 21st century that the proper education and guidance was not readily available. So our family wanted to be that voice of guidance, that voice of education here in Philadelphia and the surrounding area. And so that's what made us start BFRIN.
Now, you had a relative that was kind of involved at one point with, having an issue, and that kind of introduced you to this idea too, correct?
Most definitely. Most definitely. My aunt had breast cancer, and she was a part of that underserved community where she had state-funded Medicaid. And after her breast surgery, she was not privy to a lot of the items, supplies, as far as prosthetics and bras that were more available, I would say, in a more affluent area. She was not made aware of them, and she was not offered them. Maybe, the doctors were thinking that her health insurance didn't cover it, or they didn't have the information themselves. And so because she didn't have what she needed after breast surgery, we later found out that these items are available to her, to women in underserved communities, as well as women in affluent areas. And we just wanted to spread that word and help.
I understand. So, how long ago did that kind of happen with your aunt?
It's for her, it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it was a very long time, that gap between when she needed these items and when we found out what was available. And we started BFRIN about 10 years ago.
So turning our subject a little bit more over to, the business side, what were the signs that you kind of saw where you felt like your customers were being treated, and am I using that word correctly? Where you would use customers as a way to describe the people you're serving?
Well, we would say more so clients or patients, but it's really all in the, customer service arena.
Yep. So what was it that where you saw, you said, we're losing our focus. We're treating people as numbers. We're not treating them as individuals. Was there a moment in time when you kind of felt that way?
Well, I think it's apparent. It became apparent when we no longer started to talk about the person using their name, but maybe I would say using descriptions. The woman who came in yesterday with the yellow dress, or the woman who said this or said that. And there was a time when I knew all 50 people who were in our database by first and last name. Such a small number. But over the years, we've grown to over 2,050. So I think it was pretty much at that point. And even though I might not know the names personally, of each client or patient that we service, the BFRIN representative that we have assigned to that person must know it. We can't use descriptions of people. We have to know the people. We have to know something about what their individual story is. And when that's lost, then that person becomes just a number, just another name in the database.
How do you think it's changed your operation when you were using a number, or you're getting away from it, and then you kind of made a clear, and I'm just guessing, when you made a choice to say to everybody, okay, no more. We have to now. Instead of me saying that, tell me the transition that you saw in your organization from going, from a number to a person. What was that like?
Well, I think it was when we started hearing these descriptions even more often, and there wasn't a name associated to this story that we wanted to tell or needed help with. And so when we saw that more and more at our monthly meetings, we began to say, well, who exactly are you talking about? And and that's when we said we have to get back to basics. We have to get back to who is this person? What is their story? But it happened over time gradually. It's kind of like a ship or a little boat that leaves the shore. It just gradually gets to the water, and then it gets far out into the middle of the sea. And it's not until you look back and see that you've come far away, that you say, okay, we have to make some adjustments here. So I think it was over time we started noticing it, and we started coming back to shore gradually as well.
So when you made that, it sounds like a minor, I mean, it sounds like a very minor shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what did you know? What was your observations of how it changed went on in your organization when that switch happened?
I think for me personally, when I didn't know a name of a person, or when a person would, we would have a client come in and she would actually ask to speak to me or speak to my mother. And, maybe we weren't in the office that day. We were handling other company business. So I think when those things happen, when I don't know a name or the person is requesting me and I'm not available, those are some of the, the pinpointed scenarios that would happen that would set that red light off.
Yeah. Yeah. And was there things that you noticed how your staff would start treating people differently when they knew their name?
Definitely. Most definitely. When our staff knew the person's name, they would even be more apt to go the extra mile for this person. When they knew the person's name, now they would spend a little longer on their case file, instead of handling one client and going directly to the next. They would actually labor a little more for that person that they knew their name.
And I guess your staff kind of liked it too, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It makes it more of a family environment. It makes it, to where when patients and clients come in, when you know that name, you feel a camaraderie. You almost want to be at work because you feel like you're going somewhere where there's family. It's not just a place of work. It's a place of family, and it's a place where everybody, it sounds a little cliche, but that place where everybody knows your name.
Yeah. So now, if you were if you were to talk to another executive director at a nonprofit and she or he shared with you, oh yeah, I'm seeing it at my organization, and you would give them some recommendations, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say, for one, make sure that each person in the organization feels the same way about customer relations, that, to be committed to this mantra. Do not treat people like a number, but more like your grandmother. So get a commitment from everyone on the team to feel that way, for one. And then perhaps even create a customer satisfaction survey, that will help you to determine where your true strengths and weaknesses are. Also, perhaps to have weekly or monthly meetings where you discuss individual patient or customer profiles, and then collaborate as a group to see how you can help each customer or client on a case-by-case basis. Yes, and then definitely to conduct a follow-up call, perhaps maybe after 2 weeks or 2 months. Let the customer know that you're thinking about them long after the transaction. And that makes them feel special. It has a tremendous impact on repeat business, and it has an impact on the family feeling within the office itself.
So when you started doing a little bit more, because I guess the first step was to make sure you knew people's names as a staff.
Yes.
That was the first step, right?
Yes.
And then I guess the next step was you started talking about them in meetings and I think yes. I remember too, from our conversations too. I mean, you really felt that one of the strengths of your organization was its customer service.
Definitely. That's what we were built on, and we wanted to keep that as our foundation and build upon that.
So outside of the individual names, what is it do you think that your organization does that you've noticed is quite a bit different than other organizations, and that you think your kind of best practices at?
Yes, well, I think it has a lot to do with feeling the struggle of the client or patient, and also to teamwork. Realizing that sometimes we must wear different hats, and being prepared to help coworkers to complete projects that are not in our personal, day-to-day scope. That's important for us, to be cross-trained and willing to help.
What else? What else do you think you do really well at?
I think being more organized now to make sure that each file is exactly the same, although it's different for each patient. So, in explaining that, I would say that there won't be one client's file that is missing one step of the process. So, in that way, it would be exactly the same as each file to make sure we haven't missed any part of the process. But of course, the content of that file would be different. So I would say being highly organized helps.
So does when you say file, I'm assuming that you're still using hard copy and that type of thing. Is that correct?
No, we have hard copy files, but we really depend on our digital file. We moved over to digital files some years ago. And so every piece of the patient's chart, the client's chart is scanned in to our central system, and we're able to pull it up electronically.
So has any of the forms that you now use changed? So in other words, is when you started making a change to making things more personal, were there certain questions you started asking inside the file that made the person seem more like a person instead of a number?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. That would go back to that satisfaction survey as one file that changed a little, but that satisfaction survey that goes out to the client is definitely more personalized, and it's asking for more of their feedback. There are more options for kind of paragraph answers instead of just yes or no or check the box between 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, scaling their evaluation, but more room for them to talk. So
more open-ended questions.
Exactly. More open-ended questions. And then for the BFRIN representative, the questions that they need to ask themselves after the client has left is definitely more personalized, and it would talk about that individual client as opposed to just static questions.
What about, are you meeting and educating doctors too?
Yes, we most definitely are, and that definitely helps with the process. Like I said, there were medical professionals who had advised our clients early on to put socks for symmetry and other items. So now what we do is we go to the different hospitals and we provide in-service sessions that will educate those medical professionals on the medical necessity of breast prosthetics, the medical necessity of having post-mastectomy garments and bras. And that's proved to be very instrumental in creating a relationship with the doctors so that now they can give this information to the patients, and the circle is now more complete.
Now, is it like the patient situation where you've tried to be more personal with the doctors, or is there not as much follow-up with the doctors as it is with the patients?
There's definitely a lot more follow-up than it had been. We realized that, the doctors and medical personnel at the hospitals, they would rather deal with organizations and companies that they have a relationship with. And we feel the same way. And so we try to keep our in-service sessions very regular at the different community hospitals. So we try to visit them at least once every 6 months. But then we also have a representative that goes around to the different clinics and hospitals, and they know the representatives that we send by name. And so we just kind of check on them very often to make sure they, if there's any questions that they have or if they need any more literature. And so we definitely want a face to our name.
I'm curious, have you ever had a situation where one of the clients that you were working with kind of came to you and said, my doctor, Dr. So-and-so, told me this, and it's something terrible, wrong, and about breast augmentation or whatever, and you had to go back to the doctor and say, we heard this and this is not correct. Or have you ever had situations like that?
Oh, yeah. But for one, it's far and few between that we have it. But when we do have those situations, it's really very pleasantly surprising how the doctors and medical professionals will receive that information from us. And they, when we go to them on those rare occasions and show them the items that are to be used instead of what they are suggesting, or give them information, they welcome it, and it's something that's new to them. And so they're excited to learn about it. And we give them other information that just backs up the validity of this information, but they're very welcoming of the information.
You work and live in the Philadelphia metropolitan area, and I live and work in the New Jersey metropolitan area. And, recently in the last 2 years, I've had some medical issues where it was nothing serious, just kind of sports related injuries. And, it's amazing how you feel. I think I had to see 4 different doctors, and how none of them really knew my name.
Yeah.
They are. And I think it really, really, really affected the care that I got.
Yeah.
And so I think you see this, and I mentioned the metropolitan areas only because, I think these doctors are seeing so many patients that it's, forget the name. They just are going from one patient to another so quickly.
Yeah.
Do you notice the same thing?
We've noticed that in some occasions, but we feel like when we deal with the medical assistants that will usually provide the prescriptions that are needed and other care for the patients, they tend to know the breast cancer survivor a little more,
Wow.
and so that makes us feel good, because the patient is also involved in their own care. And when we talk to the patient, we'll ask them to get in touch with the doctor's office, and then we also get in touch with the doctor's office. But it seems like the representative who's at the front desk, or that medical assistant, has a very good rapport, with the patient.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine. So you start this organization and you start growing, and at some point you notice that, hey, we don't seem to be treating people as individuals. And then you go back and you start treating them as individuals. You must like more what you're doing now.
Definitely.
Because was there ever a point in your organization where you had people who were not on board with that idea?
For the most part, everyone was on board with it. They knew that that's how we started our organization. But it's kind of like they could get roped into that little boat drifting out to shore the same way we could. So everyone was on board with it. And it's only if you kind of identify to another person that they might be headed in that direction, or if someone points it out to me that I'm leading in that direction, that you notice it, because you really don't. You can get caught into the vortex of, going to work every day and filling out the forms and doing all the things that are required, and you don't notice it. So I think that everyone was on board, but when you point it out, that's when you realize, oh, okay, I have to come back to center. I have to remember what our focus is here. And that's what makes it special, is that everyone at BFRIN really loves people, and our focus is to help. And as long as we continue to center ourselves and refocus and, every day make that self-assessment to make sure that the patient is a person and not a number, then that's when we thrive.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you and I talked originally, I love this topic. I thought it was a great topic. And I even looked at my own business and I said, are we treating our customers as individuals or as a number? And, the problem is on my team, everybody seems to have such great memories. So, I don't, and so, when I mention a certain name of somebody, Christina, who works for me, she's got a memory. It's unbelievable. And she remembers every single detail about that person. But for me, I often have to go back to my notes, and I do keep my notes, and I go back to them to kind of refresh my memory. Because a lot of times when I'm talking to people or customers, a lot of times I know their story and their, how their nonprofit began and how they got involved in it. And I usually sometimes even know something about their families and stuff like that, just because it comes up in the conversation. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting just when you told me about the subject, I looked and see how we're applying it in our own business.
Yes.
And I think you're right. I think it's like, we keep a file on our clients, of course, and in that file we have a lot of notes. So is there anything else that you would suggest to a nonprofit who might be experiencing the same problem?
Yes, I think to constantly assess yourself on an individual basis. And then when you do the employee reviews, definitely bring it up, the subject of customer relations and really treating people as people and not as a number. So it has to be that each person does the self-assessment, that each manager brings it up on the evaluation. And then when it comes to group meetings and staff meetings, that's something that definitely is addressed each time. When it's left, at length to where this issue is not talked about, is not brought up, that's where the problem occurs. But if it's always in the forefront, then you're doing well.
Yeah, so I think the summary of what you're telling us is it has to be a priority from a leadership position.
Definitely.
And if as long as the leadership is always talking about it, regardless of the processes and procedures you have in place, it'll make its way through the culture of the organization.
Definitely.
Well, that's great. I know this is a good subject for many, many nonprofits. And so, I would really like to thank you for speaking to us about it today.
Oh, certainly.
If for those of you who are listening, if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofit, you can call us at 862-207-4118, or you can visit our website at fscreditline.com. Pierrette, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they reach you?
They can call our office at 866-473-3325, or they can reach us online at befrin.org, and that's spelled BFRIN.org.
Great. And lastly, if anyone listening feels that their nonprofit has a unique story related to how your nonprofit is applying business or leadership tools, please contact me. We are always looking for speakers for our podcast, and we'd love to have you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for making the world a better place.